Good evening, my lovelies, and welcome. I'm Lady Creepypasta. This evening we have a tale from the No Sleep Reddit by Redditor DrunkenSwordsman. Before we dive in though, a quick thank you to my dark family on Patreon for all your support. Family members such as Danny White, Nicholas Corries, Dawn Fritzwater, Melissa Perez, Honey Santiago, Oliver Dace, Karen Parrott, L. Andrew Augustus, Dana Fringer, Stephen Aguilera, Tay the Fluth, Bill Thornsley, Laura Seta-Penry, and everyone listed in the episode description below. Your contribution truly does mean the world to me and helps keep this channel and podcast going. If you too would like to join these ghouls in supporting this channel and podcast, go to patreon.com/LadyMcCreepypasta for more information. But now though, my dears, it is time. So come, lean in closer, and we'll begin. My name is Sarah. I have to let someone know what is happening to me. I may not survive tonight, and I want to leave some message, some record of my end. Maybe after this, someone will finally believe my story. Maybe someone will listen to my warnings. It began around 10 days ago. I had been working a late shift. I'm a server at a local bar, and when I got home at 2 a.m., all I wanted was to lie down in bed and get some sleep. Of course, first I had to feed my cat, Wilson. The needy bastard would never let me fall asleep otherwise. Once I had filled his bowl, I dropped onto my bed and immediately passed out. I had an incredibly vivid dream that night. I found myself in a decrepit city, standing on a bare grey hill with crumbling masonry stretching all around, as far as the eye could see. The sky was a sickly grey-yellow colour, and I shivered as I looked at it. A slight wind blew, and my face screwed up as a stench of decay and corruption hit me. You know how in dreams you don't question what's going on? That was the state of mind I was in. I wasn't scared, just intrigued. Carefully stepping over fallen rocks, I set out, descending down the hill and into the warren of ruins and shells of buildings. The architecture was something truly dreamlike, the walls and pillars of once tall buildings bending in strange angles. Somehow I'm sure they would be impossible to reproduce if I tried to emulate them while awake. Through the sick grey clouds, I glimpsed the sun. It was a shriveled, diseased thing, blotches of cold black spreading over its surface. Its light cast no warmth onto the world. I started as something moved in the window of a half-fallen building next to me. I turned to face it, but whatever it was, it moved so fast that I was too late to catch even a glimpse. I could hear it, though. The crumbling crack of strained masonry from inside the house reached me. The wall of the house quivered and shook, pieces of brick dislodging and shattering on the ground. Something large moved in the shadowed windows. I caught a glimpse of pale skin, many limbs. A rattling breath sounded, and I was hit by a blast of rotten air. I woke up sweating and tossing. It was the morning. The clock next to my bed announced the time, 11 a.m. Despite having slept for nearly 9 hours, I felt exhausted, as if I had not slept at all. I chalked it up to the vivid nightmare I had experienced. I couldn't afford to go back to sleep. I had to keep on top of my university courses. That day was hard, and the shift at work afterwards even harder. I could barely keep my eyes open and earned an angry rant from the manager as reward for dropping a tray full of drinks. Once I got home, I dropped into bed and fell asleep almost immediately. Once again, I instantly began dreaming. I was not back in the crumbling city. This time my surroundings were completely dark, with not one point of light around me. I could feel cold grass underneath my feet, and a breeze rustled a tree somewhere nearby. This place didn't stink of decay like the last one, but the air was no more pleasant. Here, the air was cold and crisp, almost sterile. I can't describe how exactly I knew it, but the air felt dead. Like there was no living creature that breathed it other than me. Like not even the smallest forms of life could survive long in a world where they had to breathe it. Something moved in the dark and I crouched down in fright. I couldn't see what had moved, but it came from somewhere nearby. The creaking of long bones and muscle came from somewhere in front of me. Whatever it was, the air itself had been displaced as it shifted. Whatever it was big. I froze in place, terror gripping my muscles. My mind was screaming at me, crying out to run, to escape, but I could not move. It was as if my limbs were frozen in place. In the dark in front of me, a light appeared. It was an ominous purple swirling round with a pupil of the deepest black. An eye. Another flared to life next to it, then another and another. As I watched in horror, dozens of eyes, clustered, numberless and unblinking, opened and stared forward. Stared at me. Finally, terror released its hold on my limbs. I turned and ran, crying out in fear, tripping and stumbling in the dark. Something shifted in the dark behind me. The ground shook as a massive, bloated bulk moved, pushing the dead air in waves before it. I screamed again and awoke. I was still screaming. Reality asserted itself in a rush of relief. I was in my bed. I was safe. A cacophony of noise surrounded me. Wilson was shrieking his head off. My alarm was blaring. Someone was hammering at my door. I stumbled to my feet. I felt exhausted, the hours of sleep doing nothing at all for my body. I rushed through my apartment, blinking away the last dregs of drowsiness, and opened the door. My neighbor, Ian, stood outside. Hey, Ian, I murmured. Hey, Sarah, he said. Ian was normally a cheerful, smiling man, but now his expression was serious. Is everything all right? I asked, confused. That's actually what I wanted to ask you, he answered. I heard you yelling and then some loud banging. I thought maybe something was wrong. He trailed off. I frowned, my confusion mounting. Shouting? What was I shouting? Nothing specific, really, Ian answered. No actual words, just shouting. You sounded scared, is all. Thought it'd be best to check up on you. I smiled, doing my best to hide my confusion at the situation. Yes, I'm fine, Ian, I answered. Thanks for worrying. I just had a bad dream, is all. I was probably tossing around and making some noise. Sorry if I scared you. Ian smiled, obviously happy I was all right. Great. I have to go. Work calls. Get some rest, Sarah. You look like you haven't slept in days. He left, and I shut the door. As I passed from the hallway into the kitchen, Wilson ran towards me, yowling. A wave of guilt washed over me as I realized that I hadn't fed him the night before. I had just been too tired to remember. Luckily, I had no shift at work that day and chose to leave my university work for another day. I slept for several hours, luckily with no further nightmares. After I woke, I thought about what Ian had said. He had heard me shouting, which seemed to match the dream I had been having before I woke. What about the banging? Could I have been sleepwalking and knocking into things in my room? I had never been a somnambulist, but then again, I had never had such vivid nightmares before. I resolved to call my doctor if the problem continued after that night. As I laid down to sleep, Wilson trotted over, jumped on my bed, and laid down on my chest. He was purring contentedly, and his warm weight eased my anxiousness about having another dream. Although it took me longer than before, I eventually fell into a slumber. My hopes were to be quickly ruined. As soon as I fell asleep, I found myself on the shores of a great black sea. The air was horribly cold and I shivered. The ground beneath my bare feet was covered in small rocks and shingle. Looking down, I saw Wilson was there with me. His fur stood up as he eyed the surroundings suspiciously. The sea stretched out before me, dominating the horizon. Its waters were a deep obsidian black, and I flinched as a wave hit the shore and covered me in spray. The water was ice cold. It was obviously night, a silver of moon providing me with just enough light to see by. Wilson was still nervous, and some of his fear spread over to me. Where am I? How did I get here? The question came to me unbidden. Any one of you who has ever realized they are dreaming will know the strange disorientation that overcame me. I staggered, almost falling to one knee. Beside me, Wilson suddenly crouched down, hackles rising. A low, feral growl issued from his throat. A chill ran down my back. Wilson never growled. I shifted my stance and something beneath my feet gave a sharp crack. I looked down. A skull protruded from the rocky beach. I jumped back with a cry of panic. The thing wasn't human. It was oddly elongated and much too wide. A wide, leering smile of too many teeth grinned up at me. It wasn't human. I didn't care. I began turning to flee. Even with the knowledge this was a dream, it was too vivid for me to do anything but to give in to my instincts. I didn't complete the movement. A sound behind me made me stop, a sound I recognized from the first nightmare I had had. A rattling, diseased, evil breath. I froze. Wilson was down, hissing viciously, unsure what to do. Something behind me moved with a slow creak of sick flesh and disfigured bone. It sniffed my body like some sort of animal, and I shivered as its noxious breath washed over me. It spoke. "We remember your stench." The voice was deep, inhuman, grating. I was uncertain whether it was even audible or echoed in my mind itself. Slowly, something coiled around my waist. I couldn't look down, frozen with fear as I was. I saw it in my peripheral vision only. Pale, smooth flesh like fingers, but grotesquely many-jointed and long as a human arm. The thing lifted me up. Still, I couldn't move, couldn't resist. Something moved the shingle of the beach behind me. Something to the side of whatever was holding me up. There are more of them. The terrible voice came again.
We remember you. We remember your home. Perhaps it's time we paid a visit.
A blur of white and black flew suddenly past me. Wilson. He had recognized I was in some sort of terrible danger and had sprung to my rescue. The thing screamed terribly, whether in pain or in indignation, I couldn't tell. A cacophony of sound, the groan of grotesque bones, the gasping of diseased breath exploded around me. The thing's grip suddenly went slack and I plummeted down. The ground rushed up to meet me. I woke with a start. I was standing up and my legs almost buckled underneath me as if I had truly fallen several feet. I was covered in cold sweat. Is this just a dream? Is it real? I don't know what's happening anymore. I can't find Wilson anywhere. He simply disappeared overnight. The apartment was locked, no open windows. He can't have gotten out. I have a suspicion what happened to him. It's why I haven't slept in over a week. I'm afraid what may be waiting for me on the other side once I give in to the urge. I wish the only reason I was writing this was to make sure someone knows what happened to me if I disappear overnight, just like poor Wilson. I can barely keep my eyes open anymore, and I have no doubt that whatever killed my pet knows I will have to sleep sooner or later. It knows I'll come back to it. It'll be waiting. But this isn't my eulogy. It's a warning of what I fear is coming for the rest of you. The things I saw, they know us. They know we are here. And they are coming to meet us, whether we like it or not. Have you been having those dreams as well, my lovelies? If you are listening to this on YouTube, let me know by commenting in the section below. If you're listening on the podcast and would like to reach out to me, find me on social media. I am Lady Creepypasta on Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. If you too have a story you would like to be considered for this channel and podcast, send it to me at lady.mccreepypasta@gmail.com. Though I cannot promise every tale submitted will be performed, I do promise I read every single one of them. That is all the time we have this evening, my dears. Till next time, sweet dreams.